Virgin Maid couldn't resist her boss's charm, and something unexpected happened. A forbidden love. The pristine gates of the Sterling mansion loomed before Aria Monroe like an impossible divide between two worlds. Her worn leather messenger bag felt heavier against her hip as she pressed the intercom button, her heartbeat matching the gentle morning breeze that rustled through the carefully manicured hedges. Sterling residence. A crisp voice answered. "Hi, I'm Aria Monroe. I have an appointment with Mrs. Hudson about the governess position." Her voice remained steady, masking the nervous energy coursing through her veins. The gates opened with a soft whir, revealing a winding driveway that led to one of the most impressive homes in Greenwich and Connecticut. Each step forward felt like crossing an invisible boundary, one that people like her, a 23-year-old black woman working her way through college, rarely crossed. The front door opened before she reached it, revealing a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. "Miss Monroe? I'm Beverly Hudson, the house manager. Thank you for coming precisely on time." Aria smiled, grateful for the warmth in Beverly's tone. "Thank you for considering my application, Mrs. Hudson. Follow me. Mr. Sterling is in his study, and he'd like to meet you personally before we proceed." Beverly's heels clicked against the marble floor as she led Aria through the mansion's interior. Aria absorbed every detail: the crystal chandelier that caught morning light like captured stars, the rich mahogany wainscoting that spoke of old money and tradition, the family photos arranged precisely on side tables. One particular image caught her eye: a little boy with untamed curls and a gap-toothed smile, held by a man whose happiness seemed to radiate from the frame. "That's Oliver," Beverly said, noticing Aria's attention. "He's 6 now. The photos from last summer." Before Aria could respond, a door opened at the end of the hallway. Grey Sterling emerged, his presence immediately commanding attention. At 35, he carried himself with the unconscious authority of someone who had inherited responsibility along with wealth. His dark suit was impeccably tailored, but it was the subtle shadows under his eyes that caught Aria's attention, the mark of someone carrying invisible weights. "Miss Monroe," he extended his hand, his grip firm but not overwhelming. "Thank you for coming. Please, step into my study." The study felt like a separate world within the mansion. While the rest of the house gleamed with polished perfection, this room lived and breathed. Books lined floor-to-ceiling shelves, their spines showing evidence of frequent use. A child's drawing sat framed on the desk, stick figures labeled Daddy and Oliver, holding hands under a crayon sun. "Please sit." Gray gestured to a leather chair before settling behind his desk. "Mrs. Hudson speaks highly of your references, but I'd like to hear directly from you. Why are you interested in this position?" Aria straightened her spine, meeting his gaze directly. "I believe in the power of education to transform lives, Mr. Sterling. I'm studying to become a teacher, and while this position would help me financially complete my degree, it's more than that. I understand Oliver lost his mother 2 years ago. Children need more than just academic guidance during such times. They need someone who sees them, who understands that learning happens through both books and emotional growth." Something shifted in Gray's expression, a subtle softening around the eyes, a barely perceptible lowering of his guard. "Oliver is everything to me. Since losing Rebecca, he's struggled to connect with the tutors we've hired. They're all qualified, but they treat him like a task to be managed rather than a child to be nurtured." "Children aren't tasks, Mr. Sterling. They're whole people with their own inner worlds. Sometimes, the most important lesson isn't in any textbook. It's learning how to process feelings too big for their small hearts to handle alone." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Aria worried she'd overstepped. But Gray leaned forward slightly, his attention fully focused on her in a way that made her pulse quicken. "Would you like to meet him?" he asked, surprising both Aria and Beverly, who stood quietly by the door. "Now?" Aria couldn't hide her smile. "I'd love to." Gray pressed an intercom button. "Maggie, could you bring Oliver to my study, please?" Minutes later, the door opened again, and Oliver Sterling peeked in, half hidden behind his nanny. He was smaller than his photos suggested, with dark curls that refused to be tamed, and eyes that held too much seriousness for a 6-year-old. Aria didn't wait for him to come to her. Instead, she knelt down to his eye level, removing the height advantage adults often held over children. "Hi, Oliver. I'm Aria. I heard you're really good at building with Legos. What's the coolest thing you've ever built?" Oliver's eyes widened slightly, his gaze darting to his father before returning to Aria. "A space station," he said softly, "with a landing pad for emergency rockets." "Emergency rockets?" That's brilliant thinking. You never know when astronauts might need a quick escape plan, right? A smile tugged at the corner of Oliver's mouth. Small, but real. Do you like space too? I love space. Did you know that right now, there are astronauts up there conducting experiments that could help us grow food on Mars someday? Oliver stepped fully into the room, his shyness forgotten in the face of shared enthusiasm. Really? Dad, did you know that? Gray watched the interaction with an expression Arya couldn't quite read. I didn't, son. Maybe Mrs. Munro could tell us more about it sometime. The hope in Oliver's eyes was impossible to miss. Are you going to be my new teacher? Arya looked up at Gray, suddenly aware of how this moment balanced on a knife's edge of possibility. His gaze met hers, and something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, of how perfectly the pieces seemed to fit. If your father agrees, Arya said carefully, I'd be honored to be your teacher. Gray stood, moving around his desk to stand beside his son. Miss Monroe, could you start Monday? Beverly will help you with the paperwork and show you around the house. Oliver has a specific routine we try to maintain, but I trust you'll find ways to make learning engaging for him. Monday would be perfect. Arya rose to her feet, her heart lighter than it had been in months. This was more than just a job. It was an opportunity to make a difference, to help heal a family that had lost its center. As Beverly led her out to handle the formal details, Arya glanced back once. Gray had lifted Oliver onto his lap, their dark heads bent together as they presumably discussed their new teacher. The morning sun streamed through the study windows, illuminating them in golden light, and for a moment, Arya could see the shape of what this family could become, whole again, but in a new way, like a mosaic made more beautiful by its carefully mended breaks. She didn't know then how deeply the Sterlings would change her life, or how her presence would transform theirs. She couldn't have guessed that crossing the threshold of that mansion would be the first step on a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, family, and belonging. All she knew was that something significant had shifted in the universe, like the first note of a song that would eventually become a symphony. Monday couldn't come soon enough. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made everything feel possible. Arya adjusted her navy blazer one last time before entering the Sterling mansion, her teaching materials organized neatly in her new professional bag, a splurge she'd justified as an investment in her future. The house felt different now that she belonged here, even if only as an employee. Beverly greeted her with a warm smile and a set of keys. Your classroom is ready, she said, leading Arya up the grand staircase. Mr. Sterling had it prepared over the weekend. The classroom took Arya's breath away. What had once been a spare room had been transformed into an educational paradise. One wall featured a floor-to-ceiling world map. Another held sleek bookshelves filled with carefully curated titles. Her cozy reading nook with plush cushions occupied one corner, while a state-of-the-art smartboard dominated another wall. Arya struggled to find words that wouldn't betray how overwhelmed she felt by such luxury. Gray, Mr. Sterling, wanted Oliver to have a proper learning environment, Beverly explained, her eyes twinkling. Though between us, I think he was quite impressed by your interview. Before Arya could respond, rapid footsteps approached, and Oliver burst into the room, his school uniform already slightly rumpled. You came, he exclaimed, then immediately tried to contain his excitement, as if remembering he was supposed to be more reserved. Of course I did, Arya smiled, kneeling to his level, a habit she'd cultivated during her student teaching. And guess what? I brought something special for our first day. She reached into her bag and pulled out a clear container, holding what appeared to be ordinary soil. Oliver's brow furrowed in confusion. This isn't just any dirt, Arya explained. This is a simulation of Martian soil. Scientists use it to study how we might grow food on Mars someday. Want to try an experiment? Oliver's eyes lit up, but before he could answer, a deep voice from the doorway said, That sounds fascinating. Gray Sterling stood there, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Arya's entire wardrobe. His tie was the exact shade of blue as Oliver's school uniform, and something about that matching detail made Arya's heart twist. Dad, can you stay for the experiment? Oliver asked, bouncing on his toes. A shadow of regret crossed Gray's features. I wish I could, buddy, but I have meetings all morning. He crossed the room and dropped a kiss on Oliver's head, then turned to Arya. Miss Monroe, could I speak with you briefly? They stepped into the hallway, leaving Beverly to distract Oliver with the classroom's features. Up close, Gray's cologne, something woodsy and expensive, made it hard for Arya to maintain her professional composure. "I wanted to thank you," he said quietly. "Oliver barely slept last night. He was so excited about starting lessons with you. I haven't seen him this enthusiastic about learning since—" He trailed off, but Arya heard the unspoken words. "Since before his mother died." "Mr. Sterling, I promise you, I'll do everything I can to nurture that enthusiasm." "Gray," he said suddenly. "Please, call me Gray, and I know you will. There's something about you—" He stopped, as if catching himself. "Your teaching methods. They're exactly what Oliver needs." The air between them felt charged with something Arya didn't dare name. She took a small step back, maintaining professional distance. "Thank you for the amazing classroom. It's more than I could have imagined." "Yes, well," Gray cleared his throat. "Oliver deserves the best. I should get to my meetings. I'll try to be home for dinner. I'd like to hear about his first day." As he walked away, Arya allowed herself one moment to watch him go, to appreciate the broad shoulders and confident stride. Then she squared her shoulders and returned to the classroom, where Oliver was examining the world map with intense concentration. The morning flew by in a blur of activity. Arya had planned lessons that would engage both Oliver's mind and his creativity, weaving standard curriculum requirements into projects that captured his imagination. They started with the Martian soil experiment, using it as a springboard into discussions about science, ecology, and problem-solving. By lunch, Oliver had opened up considerably, sharing stories about his friends at school and his favorite books. But it was during their afternoon reading session that Arya glimpsed the depth of his emotional wounds. They were discussing Bridge to Terabithia when Oliver suddenly asked, "Do you think people can be happy again after someone they love dies?" The question hit Arya like a physical blow. She set the book aside and gave the question the weight it deserved. "I think happiness after loss is like learning to walk again after an injury. At first it seems impossible, then it hurts a lot. But slowly, step by step, you discover you can move forward, differently than before, but still forward." Oliver absorbed this, his small face serious. "Dad tries to be happy for me, but sometimes I hear him in his study at night when he thinks I'm sleeping." Arya's heart ached. "That's because your dad loves you so much. He wants to be strong for you. But it's okay for both of you to feel sad sometimes. It's also okay to feel happy. It doesn't mean you're forgetting anyone. Mum used to read to me every night," Oliver said softly. "Different voices for all the characters." "Would you like to try making character voices together?" Arya offered. "We could practice, and maybe someday you could read to your dad that way." Oliver's entire face lit up at the suggestion. They spent the rest of the afternoon reading dramatically, filling the classroom with laughter, as they attempted increasingly outrageous voices for each character. When Beverly came to remind them of the time, Arya was surprised to find it was already late afternoon. She helped Oliver pack his bag, making sure he had everything he needed for his homework. "Will you be here tomorrow?" he asked, that familiar uncertainty creeping back into his voice. "Every weekday," Arya promised. "And tomorrow, we're going to learn about the ancient Egyptians. I heard you like pyramids." "I do!" Oliver hugged her impulsively, then stepped back, looking embarrassed by his own enthusiasm. After he left with Beverly, Arya began organizing the classroom for the next day. She was so absorbed in her task that she didn't hear Gray return until he spoke from the doorway. "I see Oliver's not the only one who loses track of time when learning is this engaging." Arya jumped slightly, turning to find him leaning against the doorframe, his tie loosened and jacket gone. The casual pose made him look younger, more approachable, and infinitely more dangerous to her peace of mind. "Mr. Sterling Gray," she corrected herself. "I was just preparing for tomorrow's lessons." "Ancient Egypt," he nodded at the materials on her desk. Oliver mentioned it at least 10 times during dinner. He also demonstrated every single character voice you two practiced today. "I hope that was okay," Arya said quickly. "I know it's not traditional teaching methods, but—" "It's perfect," Gray interrupted, moving into the room. "Do you know what I heard tonight that I haven't heard in 2 years? My son's real laugh. Not the polite one he uses to make everyone think he's okay, but his actual uninhibited laugh." He was standing too close now, close enough that Arya could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Oliver is an amazing child," she said softly. "He just needs space to be himself, both the happy and sad parts." "You see him," Gray murmured. "Really see him. Do you know how rare that is?" Their eyes met, and for a moment the air felt electric with unspoken possibilities. Then Gray stepped back, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that seemed unconscious. "I should let you finish up here. Do you need a ride home? I could have James drive you." "No, thank you, I have my car." Arya began gathering her things, very aware of his presence. "Of course. Well, good night then, Miss Monroe." "Arya," she said impulsively. "If I'm calling you Gray, you should call me Arya." He smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "Good night, Arya." After he left, Arya sank into her chair, her heart racing. This job was supposed to be a stepping stone toward her teaching career, a way to pay for her degree. It wasn't supposed to make her feel like she was standing on the edge of something life-changing. But as she drove home that evening, the sunset painting the sky in shades of possibility, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that she had crossed an invisible line. In just one day, the Sterlings had begun to feel less like employers and more like something she wasn't ready to name. Tomorrow, she told herself firmly, she would establish better boundaries. Tomorrow, she would remember that this was just a job, that the warmth in Gray's eyes when he looked at her was probably just gratitude for helping his son. Tomorrow, she would be more professional, more detached, more sensible. But deep down, Arya knew it was already too late for that. 2 weeks into her new position, Arya had settled into a rhythm at the Sterling mansion. Her mornings began with preparing the classroom before Oliver arrived, eagerly bouncing in with stories from his previous evening or questions about the day's lessons. Their educational adventures had become the highlight of both their days, with Oliver blossoming under her guidance and care. But this morning was different. As Arya pulled into the circular driveway, she noticed an unfamiliar Bentley parked near the entrance. The car's presence felt like a harbinger, disrupting the peaceful routine she'd carefully constructed. Beverly met her at the door, looking uncharacteristically flustered. "Arya, dear, I should warn you, Mrs. Eleanor Sterling is here." The name sent a chill down Arya's spine. She'd heard about Gray's mother from the household staff, the family matriarch who controlled much of the Sterling fortune and wielded her influence like a precisely honed blade. "She's not usually here this early," Beverly continued in a hushed tone. "She arrived announced that she'll be observing Oliver's lessons today." Arya's heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Thank you for the warning, Beverly. I'll make sure everything is perfect." As she climbed the stairs to the classroom, Arya could hear voices drifting from Gray's study. One was familiar, Gray's deep timbre, now tight with tension. The other was cultured, sharp and unmistakably disapproving. "Really, Gray, a governess without any formal teaching credentials. What were you thinking?" "Mother, Arya is more than qualified. She's studying education at studying, so she's not even finished her degree. And you've entrusted Oliver's education to her." Arya forced herself to keep walking, even as the words cut deep. She had nearly reached the classroom when the study door opened, and Gray emerged with an elegant woman in her 60s. Eleanor Sterling was exactly as Arya had imagined. Perfectly coiffed silver hair, designer clothing, and an expression that suggested she was perpetually smelling something unpleasant. "Ah, Mrs. Monroe." Eleanor's gaze swept over Arya with clinical precision. "How interesting to finally meet you." "Mrs. Sterling," Arya nodded respectfully, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Welcome to our classroom. I'd be happy to show you our curriculum and discuss Oliver's progress." "Yes, I imagine you would." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'll be sitting in on today's lessons. I trust that won't be a problem." Before Arya could respond, Oliver came bounding down the hallway. "Grandma!" He stopped short, his earlier enthusiasm dimming slightly. "And are you staying for lessons?" "Indeed I am, darling." Eleanor's tone softened marginally. "I want to see what you've been learning with Miss Monroe." Gray stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Oliver's shoulder. "Mother, perhaps we should let them start their day. Oliver has a routine." "Nonsense. What could be more routine than a grandmother taking an interest in her grandson's education?" Eleanor swept past them into the classroom, leaving no room for argument. The morning proceeded like a carefully choreographed dance on broken glass. Arya led Oliver through their planned lessons on ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, incorporating mathematics through pyramid dimensions and engineering concepts through construction techniques. She watched Eleanor taking notes, her pen scratching against an expensive leather notebook. Despite the tense atmosphere, Oliver remained engaged, his natural curiosity overcoming his grandmother's intimidating presence. When they reached their hands-on portion, creating their own hieroglyph messages, he even managed to coax a genuine smile from Eleanor with his clever combination of symbols. "Look, Grandma, I wrote your name in hieroglyphics." Oliver proudly displayed his work. Eleanor examined the carefully drawn symbols. "Very creative, darling, though I wonder if your time might be better spent on more practical subjects." "Actually," Arya interjected carefully, "learning ancient writing systems helps develop pattern recognition and symbolic thinking, skills essential for both advanced mathematics and reading comprehension." Oliver's ability to connect historical concepts with present-day applications shows remarkable cognitive development. "Is that what they're teaching in community college these days?" Eleanor's voice dripped with false sweetness. "Mother," Gray's warning came from the doorway, where he'd appeared without anyone noticing. "A word, please." As Eleanor followed Gray out, Arya could feel her carefully constructed professional facade cracking. She turned to Oliver, who was staring at his hieroglyphics with diminished enthusiasm. "Hey," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Want to know a secret about those ancient Egyptian pharaohs?" Oliver looked up, interest rekindling in his eyes. "What?" "They believed that words had power, real magical power. They thought that writing something down made it true. So when people tried to make them feel small or unimportant, they would write about their own strength and courage, and that made them stronger." "Really?" Oliver considered this. "Could we write about being brave?" "Absolutely. In fact—" Arya was interrupted by raised voices from the hallway. "Completely out of line, Mother. Arya has done more for Oliver's education in 2 weeks than any of your recommended tutors did in months." "I'm simply concerned about appearances, Gray. The Sterlings have certain standards to maintain. Surely you can understand why having someone like her— Gray's voice turned dangerous. "Choose your next words very carefully." "Mother." Arya's chest felt tight. She turned up the classroom's music slightly. They'd been listening to recreations of ancient Egyptian instruments and focused on helping Oliver with his hieroglyphics. She wouldn't let him see how much his grandmother's words hurt. The door opened, and Gray stepped back in, his face tight with anger. "Oliver, why don't you show me what you've been working on?" "Your grandmother needs to leave for another appointment." Eleanor appeared behind him, her composure slightly ruffled. "Yes, well, Oliver, darling, I'll see you at Sunday dinner. Ms. Monroe, good day." After she left, the classroom felt lighter, as if a storm cloud had passed. Gray pulled up a chair beside Oliver's desk, genuinely interested in learning about hieroglyphics. His presence seemed to be as much about supporting Arya as engaging with his son. When their lunch break arrived, Beverly appeared to take Oliver to the kitchen. Gray lingered behind, his expression troubled. "Arya, about my mother." "It's fine." Arya cut him off, busying herself with organizing materials. "She's concerned about Oliver's education. I understand." "No." Gray moved closer, gently taking the papers from her trembling hands. "It's not fine. What she implied— I want you to know that's not how I see you. Not how any of us see you." Arya looked up, finding herself trapped by the intensity in his eyes. "How do you see me?" The question hung between them, loaded with dangerous possibility. Gray's hand was still covering hers, his thumb unconsciously tracing circles on her wrist. "I see someone extraordinary," he said finally, his voice low. "Someone who brought light back into this house. Someone who makes my son smile again. Someone who—" He trailed off, seemingly aware of how close they were standing. "Gray," Arya whispered, her heart thundering in her chest. The moment shattered at the sound of approaching footsteps. They jumped apart as Beverly returned with Oliver, who was chattering excitedly about the afternoon's planned science experiment. "I should go," Gray said, running a hand through his hair, a gesture Arya had come to recognize as a sign of agitation. "I have meetings." "But Arya, thank you for everything." The afternoon passed in a blur of activities, but Arya's mind kept returning to that moment with Gray, to the feeling of his hand on hers, to the words left unspoken between them. She knew she was treading dangerous waters. Eleanor Sterling's visit had made it abundantly clear that someone like her, a black woman working her way through school, would never be accepted as anything more than an employee in their world. But as she packed up her things that evening, Arya caught sight of her reflection in the classroom window. Behind her, pinned to the wall, was Oliver's hieroglyphic message from that morning. He'd written not just his grandmother's name, but a whole story about a teacher who brought magic to a lonely prince's castle. Maybe the ancient Egyptians were right, she thought. Maybe words did have power, and maybe, just maybe, some stories were worth the risk of writing them, even when the whole world seemed determined to erase them before they began. The Sterling Autumn Gala was the social event of the season, and for the first time in its 30-year history, someone below the family's social standing was being required to attend. Arya stared at the invitation on her desk, her fingertips tracing the embossed lettering. "It's tradition for Oliver to give a short speech about his studies," Beverly explained, watching Arya's reaction carefully. "Given how much progress he's made under your guidance, Mr. Sterling thinks you should be there to support him." The underlying message was clear. This wasn't really an invitation, but a professional obligation. Still, Arya's stomach churned at the thought of facing Eleanor Sterling and her social circle. "When is it?" Arya asked, though she'd already memorized the date on the invitation. "This Saturday evening, and before you worry, Mr. Sterling has arranged for everything." Beverly's eyes twinkled, "including a suitable gown from Bergdorf's." Arya's protest died on her lips as Oliver burst into the classroom, his face alight with excitement. "Did you get it? Did Dad tell you about the gala? I'm going to talk about our Egypt project and the science experiments." "And no, slow down," Arya laughed, her anxiety momentarily forgotten in the face of his enthusiasm. "Yes, I got the invitation. Are you sure you want to talk about our projects in front of everyone?" "Of course. Dad says I can show them the model of the solar system we built and explain about the Mars colonies we designed." Oliver bounced on his toes. "You'll help me practice my speech, right?" How could she say no to that hopeful face? "Of course I will, but first, we need to finish our lesson on civil rights leaders. Remember what we talked about yesterday?" As they dove into their morning lessons, Arya pushed thoughts of the gala aside, but they came rushing back that afternoon when Gray appeared in the classroom doorway, looking particularly devastating in a navy suit that made his eyes seem impossibly blue. "Oliver, buddy, could you go help Beverly with something? I need to speak with Ms. Monroe." Once Oliver had left, Gray closed the classroom door, something he'd never done before. The click of the latch felt somehow significant. "I assume Beverly told you about the gala," he said, moving closer to Arya's desk. "She did. Mr. Sterling." "Gray," he corrected automatically. "Gray," Arya amended. "You don't have to include me. I know these events are for family and your social circle. I can help Oliver prepare his speech without actually attending." "That's not—" He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I want you there, Arya, not just for Oliver. These past few weeks you've become—" He trailed off, searching for words. The air between them felt charged with possibility. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs as Gray moved around her desk, closing the distance between them. "My mother's opinion doesn't matter," he said softly. "Neither does anyone else's. What matters is that this house felt dead before you came. What matters is that my son laughs again. What matters is that every morning I find myself looking forward to those brief moments when I might see you, hear your voice, catch your smile." Arya stood, needing to move, to create space before she did something dangerously unprofessional. But Gray caught her hand, his touch sending electricity through her veins. "Tell me you don't feel this too," he whispered. Before she could respond, a knock at the door forced them apart. Beverly entered with Oliver, who was clutching a stack of papers. "Dad, look what Arya helped me draw for my speech." The moment shattered, reality rushing back in. They spent the next few minutes examining Oliver's illustrations, both hyper-aware of their proximity, but maintaining careful distance. Later that evening, after Oliver had gone home with his father, Arya visited Bergdorf's. The sales associate was expecting her, leading her to a private fitting room where a selection of gowns awaited. "Mr. Sterling was very specific about the color palette," the associate explained, showing her a stunning midnight blue gown with subtle silver beading. "He thought this would suit you perfectly." Arya's breath caught as she slipped on the dress. The fabric felt like liquid starlight against her skin, the cut both elegant and daring. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. "It's perfect," she whispered, then caught herself. "But I can't accept this." "That's too much." Mr. Sterling was quite insistent. The associate smiled. He also selected these. She opened a velvet box, revealing a delicate silver necklace and matching earrings. Arya's hands trembled as she touched them. "There's a note," the associate added, handing her a cream-colored envelope. Inside, in Gray's distinctive handwriting, "Let them see you as I do. G." The night of the gala arrived too quickly. Arya stood at the entrance to the Sterling Mansion's grand ballroom, feeling like an actress about to step onto a stage she hadn't rehearsed for. "You look beautiful," a familiar voice murmured behind her. Gray stood there in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his eyes drinking her in with undisguised appreciation. "The dress? The jewelry? It's too much," Arya said softly. "It's not enough," he countered, offering his arm. "Fine, shall we?" The ballroom was a sea of wealth and privilege. Conversations quieted as they entered together, curious eyes following their progress across the floor. Arya spotted Eleanor Sterling among a group of society matrons, her expression darkening at the sight of them. "Ignore them," Gray whispered, leading her to where Oliver waited by the stage. The boy's face lit up when he saw her. "Arya, you look like a princess." His innocent enthusiasm drew genuine smiles from those nearby, temporarily displacing the undercurrent of judgment. But as the evening progressed, Arya couldn't ignore the whispers, the speculative glances, the way conversations stopped when she approached. Oliver's speech was a triumph. He spoke confidently about their projects, his natural enthusiasm infectious as he explained complex concepts in childlike terms. The audience was charmed, even Eleanor managing a genuine smile. "That's my son," Gray said proudly as applause filled the room. "And it's all thanks to you." They were standing close, too close for propriety, when Eleanor approached, a gentleman in his 60s at her side. "Gray, darling, Dean Richardson from Yale has some fascinating insights about educational standards he'd like to share." The implied dismissal was clear. Arya stepped back, but Gray's hand found the small of her back, holding her in place. "Mother, I'm sure the Dean's insights are valuable, but—" "Actually," the Dean interrupted, his keen eyes assessing Arya, "I'd be very interested in Ms. Monroe's thoughts. Oliver's presentation showed remarkable development for his age. Your methods seem quite innovative." Eleanor's face tightened as Arya engaged in a detailed discussion about progressive education techniques. The Dean seemed genuinely impressed, asking thoughtful questions and nodding appreciatively at her responses. "You know," he said finally, "Yale School of Education has a very competitive graduate program. With your practical experience and obvious talent, you might be an excellent candidate." The suggestion hung in the air like a bomb about to detonate. Yale, an ivory tower that had previously seemed as unreachable as the moon, now being presented as a possibility. "That's a wonderful idea," Eleanor said suddenly, her voice honey-sweet with hidden venom. "After all, someone of Mrs. Monroe's background should seize every opportunity for advancement. Perhaps in a few years, she could even qualify for a position at one of Connecticut's better public schools." Gray's hand tightened on Arya's back. "Mother, it's fine," Arya cut him off, her voice steady despite the pain in her chest. "Mrs. Sterling is right. I should focus on my career advancement. If you'll excuse me, I need some air." She fled to the mansion's garden, the cool October air a shock against her heated skin. The fountain's gentle splash provided cover for the sob that threatened to escape her throat. "Arya," Gray's voice came from behind her. "Please don't listen to her." "Why not?" Arya turned to face him. "She's right. I don't belong in your world. This dress, these jewels, they're just costumes. Tomorrow, I'll go back to being the governess, and you'll go back to being—" "Being what?" He stepped closer, his eyes intense in the garden's soft lighting. "Being miserable, being half alive, because that's what I was before you came here." "Gray, please." Arya held up a hand to stop his advance. "We can't." "Why not?" "Because I'm not a fairy tale princess. I'm a black woman working her way through college, teaching your son to pay my tuition. Your mother, your social circle, they'll never accept." Her words were cut off as Gray closed the distance between them, his lips finding hers in a kiss that shattered every boundary they'd carefully maintained. For a moment, the world fell away. There was only the warmth of his mouth, the strength of his arms around her, the rightness of finally giving in to what they'd both been feeling. Then reality crashed back as voices approached the garden. They broke apart, both breathing heavily. "I should go," Arya whispered. "Stay," Gray pleaded. "We can figure this out." But Arya was already backing away, her heart breaking with each step. "I'm sorry. I can't. We can't." She fled into the night, leaving behind a fairy tale that was never meant to be hers. But as she drove home, tears blurring her vision, she couldn't forget the taste of his lips, the safety of his arms, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious. Tomorrow, she would have to face him again, have to pretend that kiss never happened. Tomorrow she would remember her place in his world, but tonight, just for tonight, she let herself dream of impossible things. Monday morning loomed like an executioner's blade. Arya sat in her car outside the Sterling mansion, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. The beautiful gown from Saturday night hung in her closet, like a reminder of a dream she shouldn't have dared to dream. The memory of Gray's kiss burned on her lips, making it impossible to pretend nothing had changed. Her phone buzzed, the 10th text from her best friend Mia, since she'd confessed everything yesterday. "Don't you dare quit. You're not doing this to Oliver." Mia was right. Whatever complicated feelings existed between her and Gray, Oliver shouldn't have to suffer another loss. Taking a deep breath, Arya gathered her teaching materials and headed inside. Beverly met her at the door with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Sterling left early for meetings in the city. He'll be gone all week." The message was clear. Gray was avoiding her. Arya wasn't sure if she felt relieved or disappointed. "Oliver's waiting in the classroom," Beverly added softly. "He's been asking for you since he woke up." The moment Arya entered the classroom, Oliver launched himself at her. "You disappeared from the party. I wanted to show you the dessert table. They had chocolate fountains." Guilt twisted in Arya's stomach as she hugged him. "I'm sorry, buddy. I wasn't feeling well, but I heard everyone loved your speech. Dad said I did great. And guess what? Grandma's friend from Yale said I explained the Mars colony better than his freshman students." As Oliver chattered excitedly about the gala, Arya fell into their familiar routine. They worked on multiplication tables, discussed the water cycle, and started a new chapter book. For a few hours, she could almost forget about Saturday night. Almost. Until Oliver asked, innocently enough, "Are you coming to my birthday party next weekend?" Arya froze. She'd been helping Oliver plan his space-themed 7th birthday party for weeks, but that was before. "I'm not sure, Oliver. I might have to study that day." His face fell. "But you have to come. Dad already ordered the telescope we picked out, and you promised to help me show everyone the constellations." Oliver, how could she explain that her presence would only complicate things? That after what happened at the gala, she needed to maintain professional distance. A knock at the door saved her from responding. Beverly entered with a thick manila envelope. "This came for you by courier, Arya." Inside was an application package from Yale's School of Education, already filled out with her information. A post-it note in elegant handwriting read, "The deadline is next week. Don't let anyone tell you where you belong. Dean Richardson." Arya stared at the application, emotions warring in her chest. Was this an opportunity or an escape route? "What's that?" Oliver peered at the papers. It's for a special school where teachers learn to be better teachers. Like how you helped me learn to be better at math. Something like that. Oliver considered this. "If you go there, will you still be my teacher?" The question hit her like a physical blow. "Oliver, sometimes people have to make hard choices to follow their dreams, but that doesn't mean they stop caring about the people they leave behind." "Like Mom." The room fell silent. Oliver rarely spoke about his mother so directly. "No, honey." Arya knelt beside him. "Your mom didn't choose to leave. She loved you more than anything in the world, and she would have stayed with you forever if she could. Dad says that too." Oliver's voice was small. But everyone leaves anyway. First Mom, then all my other tutors, and now you're going to leave too." "Oliver, I hate Yale!" he suddenly shouted, sweeping the application off her desk. Papers scattered across the floor as he ran from the room. Arya found him in his favorite hiding spot, the window seat in the library, curled up with the stuffed astronaut she'd given him last week. "Can I join you?" she asked softly. A small nod. She settled beside him, not touching, just present. "You know what the hardest part of being a teacher is. It's not the lessons or the grading or even dealing with Beverly's healthy snacks." That earned her a tiny smile. "The hardest part is caring so much about my students that sometimes my heart feels too big for my chest, and you, Oliver Sterling, have taken up the biggest space in that heart." He uncurled slightly. "Really? Really? Which is why I need you to understand something very important. I haven't made any decisions about Yale, and even if I did apply, even if I did go, it wouldn't change how much I care about you. Promise? I promise. And you know what else? Yale is right here in Connecticut. Even if I went there, I wouldn't be far away." Oliver processed this. "Could I visit you? And would you still come to my birthday party? If your dad says it's okay, yes to both." "He'll say yes. He likes when you're around. He smiles more." Arya's heart stumbled. "Oliver, I saw you dancing with him at the party, before you got sick and left. He looked happy, like in the old pictures with Mom. How could she explain to a 6-year-old the complexities of class differences, social expectations, and workplace propriety? How could she tell him that sometimes love wasn't enough to bridge the gaps between worlds? Your dad loves you very much, she said instead, and he wants you to be happy. I'm happy when you're here. Oliver's logic was simple, devastating. Both of you are happy when you're here, so why can't you just stay? Before she could answer, footsteps approached the library. They both looked up to find Gray standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Oliver, buddy, Beverly needs help taste-testing birthday cake options. Oliver brightened immediately, crisis forgotten in the face of potential sugar. He hugged Aria quickly before running off, leaving her alone with Gray for the first time since the kiss. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Beverly said you were in the city, Aria finally managed. I was. I came back. Gray moved into the room, his presence filling the space. We need to talk about Saturday night. No, we don't. Aria stood, needing the illusion of control. It was a mistake. We got caught up in the moment, but it can't happen again. A mistake. His voice was low, dangerous. Is that what you call it when something feels completely right? When everything finally makes sense? Gray, please. She backed away as he approached. Think about Oliver. Think about your family, your position. I think about Oliver every second of every day. And you know what? He's happier than he's been in 2 years. This house is fuller, brighter, more alive. Because of you. That's because I'm his teacher. Not because I'm the woman I'm falling in love with. The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. Don't, Aria whispered. Please don't say that. Why not? Because it scares you. Because it's complicated. Or because you feel the same way and it terrifies you. He was too close now. Aria could smell his cologne, could see the faint stubble on his jaw, could feel the heat radiating from his body. I saw the Yale application on your desk, he said softly. Is that what you want, to run away? I want, her voice broke. I want what's best for Oliver, for you. And that's not me complicating your lives with impossible relationships. Shouldn't I get a say in what's best for me? Gray's hand came up to cup her cheek, and despite herself, she leaned into his touch. Shouldn't we at least try? Your mother is not in charge of my heart. His thumb traced her lower lip. Stay, Aria. Apply to Yale if you want to, but don't use it as an escape. Stay and fight for this. For us, sir. The library door creaked, and they jumped apart as Beverly appeared. Sorry to interrupt, Mamassim, but Oliver is asking for both of you. Something about needing expert opinions on chocolate versus vanilla cake. Reality crashed back in. Aria stepped away from Gray, straightening her clothes with trembling hands. We should go, she said. Oliver's waiting, but as they walked to the kitchen, Gray's words echoed in her mind. Stay and fight for this. The question was, did she have the courage to fight for something that felt both perfectly right and impossibly wrong? The smell of fresh-baked cake guided them to the kitchen, where Oliver sat surrounded by sample plates, his face smudged with frosting. His eyes lit up when he saw them both, and for a moment, Aria could see it. The future they could have, the family they could be. If only love were enough to bridge the gaps between their worlds. Oliver's birthday party transformed the Sterling Mansion's backyard into a miniature space station. Professional decorators had created a stunning replica of a lunar landing site, complete with a life-sized astronaut suit that kids could try on. The telescope Gray had ordered stood proudly on a raised platform, ready for the evening's stargazing activities. Aria arrived early to help with final preparations, her heart racing when she saw Gray directing the setup crew. They hadn't been alone together since their conversation in the library, maintaining careful distance while still trying to act normal for Oliver's sake. You came! Oliver's excited voice broke through her thoughts as he ran toward her, already wearing his custom-made astronaut costume. Dad, look, Aria's here. Gray turned, and their eyes met across the yard. The morning sun caught the silver in his hair, and Aria's breath hitched at how handsome he looked in casual clothes, dark jeans and a navy sweater that made his eyes seem impossibly blue. Of course she came, Gray said softly. She promised, didn't she? Beverly appeared with a clipboard, breaking the moment. Aria, dear, could you help Oliver practice his constellation speech before the guests arrive? And Gray, your mother just called. She's bringing the Blackwood family with her. Aria's stomach dropped. The Blackwoods were old money, with a daughter Oliver's age who Eleanor had none too subtly been pushing as a perfect future match. Even at 7, as the social engineering never stopped. I should go over the astronomy facts with Oliver, Arya said quickly, leading him toward the telescope platform. They spent the next hour reviewing constellations and space facts, Oliver's enthusiasm infectious, as he practiced explaining stellar phenomena to his future guests. But Arya couldn't help noticing the increased activity below as more staff arrived, transforming the casual children's party into something more suited to Eleanor Sterling's standards. "Look who's here," Eleanor's voice carried across the yard. "Oliver, darling, come say hello to Madison." Oliver tensed beside Arya. "I don't want to," he whispered. "Madison always makes fun of my space books." "Sometimes we have to be polite even to people we don't like," Arya said gently. "But you know what? True friends will like you for exactly who you are. Like you do. Like I do." She straightened his costume's collar. "Now, show them how much you know about the stars. Maybe you'll even teach Madison something new." Oliver squared his small shoulders and descended the platform. Arya watched as he politely greeted the Blackwoods, noting how Eleanor immediately positioned him next to Madison for photos. "She never gives up, does she?" Gray's voice came from behind her. Arya turned to find him closer than expected, the confined space of the platform bringing them within inches of each other. "She wants what she thinks is best for Oliver," Arya said diplomatically. "What's best for Oliver is being allowed to be himself." Gray's hand brushed hers, seemingly by accident. "Being loved for who he is, not who others want him to be." The double meaning in his words hung between them. "Gray, I submitted your Yale application." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You what?" "It was still on your desk, completely filled out." "The deadline was yesterday." His eyes held hers. "I couldn't let you miss this opportunity, even if it means you might choose to leave." Emotions warred in Arya's chest. Anger at his presumption, gratitude for his thoughtfulness, fear of what this could mean for her future. "You had no right," she whispered. "I know." His hand found hers properly this time, threading their fingers together. "But I meant what I said in the library. I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you feel trapped." Before she could respond, Oliver's voice called up to them. "Dad, Arya, come see the cake." They broke apart as if burned, both aware of Eleanor watching them with narrowed eyes. The afternoon progressed in a blur of activities, games, presents, space-themed snacks, and finally, the moment Oliver had been waiting for, the astronomy presentation. As the sun set, children and adults gathered around the telescope platform. Oliver, still in his astronaut costume, confidently explained basic astronomy concepts Arya had taught him, pointing out visible planets and constellations. "And that's Polaris, the North Star," he explained. "Arya says it's special because it stays in the same place while other stars seem to move around it. Like how some people are constant in your life, helping you find your way when you're lost." Arya's eyes filled with tears at his impromptu addition. Across the platform, Gray was watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. "That's quite enough astronomy," Eleanor interrupted smoothly. "Madison, darling, why don't you show everyone the ballet routine you've been practicing?" "But we haven't seen Jupiter yet," Oliver protested. "Oliver," Eleanor's voice held a warning, "it's impolite to ignore your other guests' talents." "Actually," Gray stepped forward, his voice carrying authority, "I believe the birthday boy gets to choose the activities. And I, for one, would love to see Jupiter." The moment felt larger than just a children's party activity. It was Gray, publicly choosing his son's happiness over social expectations. The significance wasn't lost on Eleanor, whose lips pressed into a thin line. As Oliver continued his presentation, now even more enthusiastic, Madison Blackwood and her parents drifted away from the platform. Eleanor followed, her disapproval radiating like a cold front. Later, after the cake had been cut and most guests had left, Arya found Oliver sitting alone by the telescope, still in his costume, but with the helmet off. "Did I do okay?" he asked as she sat beside him. Grandma seemed mad. "You did amazingly." Arya pulled him into a side hug. "Your dad was so proud of you." "He was?" Oliver's face lit up. "Did you see how he told Grandma that my space stuff was important?" "I did. Your dad loves you very much, Oliver. He wants you to be happy being yourself, like how he's happier being himself when you're around." Arya's heart squeezed. "Oliver, I heard Grandma talking to Mrs. Blackwood," he continued. "She said Dad's acting different, breaking patterns. What does that mean?" How could she explain that breaking patterns could be both beautiful and dangerous, that sometimes love required dismantling the very foundations you thought you needed to stand on? Sometimes, she said carefully, people realize that the way they've been doing things isn't making them happy, and changing those patterns, even when it's hard, can lead to something better. Like how I used to hate reading until you showed me books about space. Oliver's simple logic cut straight to the truth, as always. Exactly like that. Aria, Oliver's voice was small, if you go to Yale, will you still help me break patterns? She hugged him tighter, breathing in the sweet smell of birthday cake in his hair. Oh, honey, no matter what happens, I'll always be in your corner. Some patterns are meant to be permanent, like how much I care about you. And Dad. Before she could respond, footsteps approached. Gray stood there, backlit by the party lights, looking at them with an expression that made Aria's heart stop. Oliver, buddy, Beverly has your favorite hot chocolate waiting inside. Oliver hugged Aria once more before running off, leaving them alone under the stars. The telescope party lights cast everything in a soft, otherworldly glow. You're incredible with him, Gray said softly, sitting beside her. He's never connected with anyone like this since Rebecca died. He's an amazing child. Aria looked up at the stars, finding Polaris automatically. You've raised him to be thoughtful, curious, brave. He gets the bravery from you. Gray's hand found hers in the darkness. Watching you two tonight, seeing how you encourage him to be himself despite what others think, it made me realize something. Gray, don't... I'm tired of patterns. His voice was low, intense. I'm tired of living up to everyone else's expectations. When Rebecca died, I thought I had to be perfect, the perfect widower, the perfect father, the perfect sterling heir. But you make me want to be real instead of perfect. He turned to face her fully, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. The Yale application, that wasn't just about giving you options. It was about proving to you that I'm not afraid of change. If you get in, when you get in, we'll figure it out. Together, if you want to. Aria's heart thundered in her chest. Your mother will never accept this. I don't need her acceptance. I need you. The declaration hung between them, as bright and constant as Polaris above. Aria knew she should pull away, maintain professional distance, protect her heart. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But someone very wise once told Oliver that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when it terrifies you. Using my own words against me. Using your wisdom to finally be brave enough to do this. He kissed her then. Under the stars they'd spent the evening studying. This kiss was different from their first. Not a desperate confession, but a deliberate choice. His lips were soft against hers, tasting of birthday cake and possibility. When they finally broke apart, Aria rested her forehead against his. This won't be easy. The best patterns are the ones we create ourselves, Gray murmured. Let me help you break this one. Above them, Polaris shone steadily, a constant point in a changing sky. Below, in the warm circle of Gray's arms, Aria finally let herself believe that some risks were worth taking, some patterns worth breaking, and some loves worth fighting for, even if the fight had only just begun. The Yale acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, its weight far exceeding its physical presence. Aria stared at the official letterhead, her hands trembling as she read the words again. We are pleased to offer you admission to Yale School of Education's prestigious graduate program with a full merit scholarship. Her phone buzzed with Gray's morning text, a habit they'd developed since Oliver's birthday party 2 weeks ago. Coffee before class. Our usual spot. Their usual spot was a small cafe 3 blocks from the mansion, far enough to avoid gossip, close enough to maintain their carefully crafted illusion of propriety. But today, everything would change. I need to show you something, she texted back. Gray was already waiting when she arrived, 2 coffee cups on the table before him. His face lit up at the sight of her, then quickly shifted to concern as he registered her expression. What's wrong? Wordlessly, Aria handed him the letter. She watched his eyes scan the content, his face cycling through emotions, pride, joy, and something that looked suspiciously like fear. Full scholarship, he breathed. Aria, this is incredible. Is it? She sank into the chair opposite him, because all I can think about is Oliver and you, and how this changes everything. Gray reached across the table, taking her hand. This changes nothing about how I feel about you. Yale is less than an hour away. We can make this work. Your mother's already suspicious. The board members' wives whisper every time I'm near Oliver in public. If we add a long-distance relationship to this, let them whisper. His grip tightened. I told you, I'm done living by their rules. Before she could respond, her phone chimed with a text from Beverly. Come quickly. Eleanor is here? Gray's phone buzzed simultaneously. His face darkened as he read the message. Mother's called an emergency board meeting. Apparently, there are concerns about the company's public image. They drove separately to the mansion, maintaining their careful facade. But the moment they arrived, it was clear something had shifted. Beverly met them at the door, her usually calm demeanor fractured with worry. She has photos, Beverly whispered. Of you two at the cafe. Other places, she's been having you followed. Arya's stomach dropped. Gray's jaw tightened as he pulled out his phone, quickly typing a message. I've called my lawyer, he said grimly. This ends today. Eleanor waited in Gray's study, a manila envelope on the desk before her. Oliver sat in a corner armchair, confusion evident on his small face as he clutched his favorite spacebook, the one Arya had given him. It's good, you're both here. Eleanor's voice dripped false sweetness. Oliver, darling, why don't you go with Beverly while the adults talk? No, Gray's voice was steel. He stays. Whatever you're planning, Mother, you might as well say it in front of everyone. Eleanor's smile tightened. Very well. She opened the envelope, spreading photographs across the desk. Would you care to explain these? The images told their story in frozen moments. Gray and Arya sharing coffee, walking in the park, their hands brushing as they reviewed Oliver's progress reports. Private moments made public by the cruel lens of surveillance. There's nothing to explain, Gray said evenly. I'm a single father spending time with my son's teacher, who happens to be an incredible woman I'm falling in love with. Oliver's head snapped up at this, his eyes wide as he looked between his father and Arya. Love, Eleanor's laugh was bitter. This isn't love, Gray. This is rebellion, or perhaps manipulation. She turned her gaze to Arya. Tell me, did you plan this from the beginning? Get close to Oliver, then seduce his vulnerable father. Was the Yale application part of your strategy? How dare you? Gray started, but Arya stepped forward. Mrs. Sterling. Her voice was calm, controlled. I understand you're afraid. Change is scary, especially when you think you're protecting your family. But I have never and would never manipulate anyone, especially not Oliver. Yet here you are, accepting expensive gifts, private meetings, and now a mysterious Yale acceptance with full scholarship. Eleanor pulled out another document. Do you know what else I found? Your mother worked as a housekeeper for 30 years. Like mother, like daughter, climbing the social ladder one wealthy family at a time. The words hit like physical blows. But before Arya could respond, a small voice cut through the tension. Stop being mean to her. Everyone turned to Oliver, who had risen from his chair, tears in his eyes but determination on his face. Oliver, Eleanor softened her tone. Darling, you don't understand. I do understand. You're trying to make Arya go away, just like you made my last 3 tutors go away. But Arya's different. She doesn't just teach me stuff. She helps me feel brave. She makes Dad smile again. She knows all about stars and space and she loves us. The last words hung in the air. Arya felt tears spill down her cheeks as Oliver ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Please don't leave, he whispered. I don't care about Yale or anything else. Just stay. Gray moved to them, creating a physical barrier between his family and his mother. Oliver's right. Enough, Mother. You can either accept that things are changing, or you can step back from our lives. Your choice. Eleanor stood, her composure cracking slightly. The board meeting is in an hour. Think carefully about your next steps, Gray. The Sterling name is mine and Oliver's to define now. Gray's voice was firm. Thank you for your concern, but we'll handle our own future. After Eleanor left, the study fell silent except for Oliver's sniffles. Arya knelt to his level, wiping his tears. Hey, Space Captain, she said softly. That was very brave of you. Did you really get into Yale? He asked. I did. But Oliver, no matter what happens with Yale or anything else, you were right about one thing. She glanced up at Gray, who was watching them with love evident in his eyes. I do love you, both of you. Then stay, Oliver pleaded. We can all look at the stars together, and you can teach me more stuff, and maybe, he hesitated, then rushed on, maybe you could be like my new mum, not replacing my real mum, but like an extra mum. Arya's heart felt too big for her chest. She looked up at Grey, who had knelt beside them. "What do you say?" he asked softly. "Stay and fight this battle with us. It won't be easy. Mother will try everything to maintain control. The board might cause problems. Society will talk. But we can face it together." Arya looked between them. This man and this child, who had somehow become her whole world. The Yale acceptance letter felt heavy in her bag, but her heart felt lighter than ever. "Your grandmother was right about one thing," she said finally. "I am like my mother. She taught me that real love is worth fighting for, no matter what anyone else thinks." Grey pulled them both into his arms as Oliver cheered. Outside the study windows, storm clouds gathered, promising rough weather ahead. But in that moment, held in the embrace of this unlikely family she'd found, Arya knew they were strong enough to weather any storm. "The board meeting," she said suddenly, pulling back. "Grey, you should prepare." "Already done," he smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Called an emergency press conference for after the meeting. Thought it was time the world met the real Sterling family. All of us." "Are you sure?" "Once we go public, I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her softly, making Oliver giggle. "Let them talk. We'll write our own story." Oliver tugged at their hands. "Can we practice my constellation speech for the press? I want to tell them about Polaris and how it helped us find our way to each other." Arya laughed through her tears, overwhelmed by the pure love radiating from both Sterling men. "That sounds perfect, Space Captain. Lead the way." As they followed Oliver to the telescope platform, Grey squeezed her hand. "You know there's no turning back now, right?" Arya thought of the Yale letter, of Eleanor's threats, of the challenges ahead. Then she looked at Oliver's excited face and felt Grey's warm hand in hers. "Good," she said firmly. Some patterns are meant to be broken." Above them, through a break in the gathering clouds, Polaris winked, constant, unwavering, and bright with possibility. The Sterling Enterprises press conference room buzzed with anticipation. Reporters filled every seat, their cameras and phones aimed at the empty podium. In a private room adjacent to the stage, Grey adjusted his tie for the 10th time, while Arya smoothed Oliver's hair. "Remember," Grey knelt to Oliver's level, "you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. Just being there with us is enough." "I want to talk," Oliver insisted, clutching his spacebook. "I wrote everything down, just like Arya taught me." Through the door they could hear Eleanor's voice addressing the board members. "Think carefully about the company's reputation. A scandal like this could affect our stock prices, our partnerships. She's trying to turn them against us," Arya whispered, her hand finding Grey's. "Let her try." He squeezed her fingers. "The board can't dictate my personal life, and after today everyone will know exactly where I stand." Beverly appeared in the doorway, her face tense. "They're ready for you." "And Grey, your mother's brought the Blackwoods." Of course she had. Eleanor's last attempt to present an alternative, the proper path she wanted her son to take. Grey's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Perfect timing. Now everyone can witness exactly what choosing your own happiness looks like. As they moved toward the stage, Oliver tugged at Arya's hand. "Are you scared?" She knelt beside him, straightening his little bow tie. "A little. But you know what? Being brave means doing what's right even when you're scared. Like the astronauts when they first went to the moon." "Exactly like that." She kissed his forehead. "Ready for our next big adventure, Space Captain." Oliver's smile could have lit up the entire room. The moment they stepped onto the stage, camera flashes erupted like stars. Grey approached the podium, while Arya and Oliver sat in the chairs arranged behind him. In the front row, Eleanor sat between Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, her expression carved from ice. "Thank you all for coming," Grey began, his voice steady. "I've called this press conference to address recent speculation about my personal life and the future of Sterling Enterprises." More cameras flashed. In the back of the room, Arya spotted Dean Richardson from Yale, his presence a silent show of support. "For the past 7 years," Grey continued, "I've led this company according to others' expectations. After losing my wife, I thought maintaining perfect control was the only way to honor her memory and protect our son. I was wrong." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Eleanor's fingers whitened around her purse strap. 3 months ago, Ms. Arya Monroe entered our lives as Oliver's teacher. She brought with her not just educational expertise, but a reminder of what it means to live authentically, to choose joy over appearance, and to love without reservation. He turned, meeting Arya's eyes. "In these months, I've watched my son flourish under her guidance, I've seen him rediscover his love of learning, his confidence, his laughter. And in the process, I found myself remembering how to live rather than just exist. This is ridiculous, Eleanor's voice carried from the front row. Gray, think about what you're doing. I am thinking, Mother. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly. He squared his shoulders. Yes, Arya and I have begun a relationship. Yes, she's been accepted to Yale School of Education with a full scholarship, an achievement she earned through her own merit and dedication. And yes, this challenges the social expectations many of you have for the Sterling family. Cameras clicked frantically as reporters scribbled notes. In the back, Dean Richardson nodded approvingly. But here's what you really need to know. Gray's voice softened as he looked at Oliver. My son would like to say something. Oliver stood, clutching his book as he approached the podium. Gray lifted him so he could reach the microphone. Hi. Oliver's voice wavered slightly before finding strength. I want to tell you about stars. See, there's this really important one called Polaris, the North Star. Arya taught me that sailors used it to find their way home because it never moves. It's constant. He opened his book to a marked page. When my mum died, I felt lost, like a sailor without a star. But then Arya came, and she taught me that it's okay to be sad sometimes, and it's okay to be happy too. She's like our Polaris, helping us find our way back to being happy. In the audience, and several reporters wiped their eyes. Even some board members looked moved. Eleanor sat rigid, her carefully constructed plans crumbling. Some people think Arya shouldn't be part of our family because she's different from us, Oliver continued, his young voice carrying surprising authority. But astronomers say the most beautiful things in space are nebulas, huge clouds of different gases and colors, all coming together to make something amazing. That's what families can be too. Different, but beautiful. He looked back at Arya, who was openly crying now. I love my mom in heaven, and I always will. But I love Arya too, and my dad is happy again, and I don't think love is supposed to follow rules about who matches with who. I think it's supposed to feel like looking at the stars, like everything makes sense even if you can't explain why. The room fell silent as Oliver finished. Gray set him down, and he ran back to Arya, who pulled him into a fierce hug. Well said, buddy. Gray smiled, then turned back to the reporters. So let me be clear. I love Arya Monroe. I'm proud of her accomplishments, her dedication to education, and most importantly, her love for my son. Anyone who has a problem with that, including board members, can feel free to tender their resignation. Eleanor stood abruptly. You're making a mistake that will cost this family everything we've built. No, Mother. Gray's voice was firm. The only mistake would be letting fear of change steal our chance at happiness. Oliver understands that. Why can't you? Because she'll leave, Eleanor burst out, her composure finally cracking. Just like Rebecca left, and you'll be broken again. And Oliver, Rebecca didn't leave by choice. Arya stood, still holding Oliver. She was taken by tragedy. But love, real love, it's not about who leaves. It's about who chooses to stay, to fight, to build something new from the broken pieces. She walked to the podium, taking Gray's hand. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just adding my own light to this family's constellation. And yes, I'll go to Yale, because Gray and Oliver believe in my dreams just as much as I believe in theirs. But I'll come home to them every night, because that's what family does. Oliver tugged at Gray's sleeve. Dad, can we show them the surprise now? Gray smiled, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. The room erupted in gasps and camera flashes as he turned to Arya. I was going to wait, do this privately. But Oliver's right. Some moments deserve witnesses. He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring with a star-shaped diamond. Arya Monroe, you've taught us that the bravest thing we can do is choose love over fear. Will you choose us? Forever. Time seemed to stop as Arya stared at the ring, then at Gray's hopeful face, then at Oliver's excited bouncing. In the audience, Eleanor stood frozen, the Blackwoods forgotten beside her. Dean Richardson smiled broadly from the back row, while Beverly dabbed her eyes near the door. This was it, the moment of no return. Yale, the press, society's judgment, Eleanor's disapproval, all of it faded against the simple truth shining in Gray's eyes and Oliver's smile. Yes, Arya whispered, then louder. Yes. As Gray slipped the ring onto her finger, Oliver launched himself at them both, creating a family embrace that said more than words ever could. Camera flashes exploded around them, capturing the moment for tomorrow's headlines, but they barely noticed. They were too busy starting their own story, writing their own rules, creating their own constellation. In the end, Eleanor's carefully constructed social matrix couldn't compete with the simple power of love chosen freely, of family built on understanding rather than obligation, of happiness claimed rather than inherited. As they left the press conference, Oliver pointing out Polaris in the early evening sky, Arya felt the weight of the ring on her finger, not as a chain binding her to someone else's expectations, but as an anchor securing her to the family she'd chosen and who had chosen her in return. Some loves were worth fighting for, some stories needed to be rewritten, and some families, like the most beautiful nebulas in space, were made more extraordinary by breaking the traditional patterns and creating their own magnificent design. The media storm following the Sterling Enterprises press conference was exactly what Eleanor had feared. Headlines ranged from heartwarming, love breaks barriers at Sterling Empire, to scandalous, society heir chooses teacher over tradition. But within the walls of the Sterling mansion, a different kind of change was taking place. Arya stood in her classroom, soon to be her former classroom, packing away the solar system models and constellation charts. The fall semester at Yale would begin in 3 weeks, and though the campus was less than an hour away, everything was about to change. "Do we have to take down the stars?" Oliver asked from the doorway, his voice small. Arya turned to find him clutching a cardboard box labeled Space Station Command Center, his special corner of the classroom where they'd planned imaginary missions to Mars. "Hey, Space Captain," she knelt to his level, "we're not taking them down forever. We're just moving them to our new home." The words still felt surreal. After the press conference, Gray had suggested they find a place of their own, somewhere between the mansion and Yale, a fresh start for their newly formed family. They'd found a beautiful house with a wraparound porch and, most importantly, a perfect spot for Oliver's telescope. "But this is where we first learned about the stars." Oliver set down his box. "This is where you taught me about Polaris and nebulas and—" His voice cracked slightly. "Come here." Arya pulled him into a hug. "You know what's amazing about stars? They're constant. No matter where we go, they'll be there. Just like how my love for you and your dad doesn't change just because we're moving. Promise. Cross my heart and hope to spot a supernova." Oliver giggled at their private joke, then grew serious again. "Is Grandma ever going to visit our new house?" The question hit Arya hard. Since the press conference, Eleanor had retreated to her summer home in the Hamptons, communicating only through lawyers regarding company matters. Her absence clearly weighed on both Oliver and Gray, though neither said it directly. "I think," Arya chose her words carefully, "sometimes people need time to adjust when things change. Your grandma loves you very much, even if she has trouble showing it right now. Dad says she's being stubborn. Well, sometimes love makes people stubborn. They get so focused on what they think is best that they forget to ask what actually makes people happy. Like how Grandma wanted me to be friends with Madison instead of learning about space." Exactly like that. Arya stood, surveying the half-packed classroom. "But you know what? True love means supporting someone's dreams, even when they're different from what you imagined." A knock at the door interrupted them. Beverly stood there, her eyes suspiciously moist. "The moving trucks are here, and you have a visitor." Eleanor Sterling stepped into the classroom, impeccably dressed as always but somehow smaller than Arya remembered. Her eyes took in the partially dismantled space-themed decor, lingering on the wall where Oliver's achievements had been proudly displayed. "Grandma!" Oliver's initial excitement faltered as he remembered he was supposed to be mad at her. "Hello, darling." Eleanor's voice was soft. "I thought, well, I brought you something." From her designer bag, she pulled out a carefully wrapped package. Oliver looked to Arya for permission before accepting it. Inside was a leather-bound book, Advanced Astronomical Theory for Young Scientists. "I had it specially printed," Eleanor explained, as Oliver reverently opened the cover. "It combines university-level concepts with explanations suitable for gifted children. I thought perhaps you and Arya could read it together, at your new home." The words hung in the air like an olive branch. Oliver looked between his grandmother and Arya, hope dawning on his face. "Does this mean you'll come visit us?" he asked. "Dad built a platform for my telescope, and Arya says we can see Jupiter really clearly from there." Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. "I would like that very much, if it's all right with your father and Arya." It was the first time Eleanor had used Arya's first name. The significance wasn't lost on anyone. "You know," Arya said carefully, Oliver's been working on a theory about how nebulas form. He could probably use an extra perspective when we test it. Really? Eleanor turned to her grandson. Tell me about this theory. As Oliver launched into an excited explanation, Gray appeared in the doorway. He froze at the sight of his mother. But something in the tableau before him, Oliver gesturing animatedly while Eleanor listened with genuine interest, Arya watching them both with gentle understanding, made him step forward instead of back. "Mother," he said softly, "you're here." Eleanor straightened, but her hand remained on Oliver's shoulder. I've been doing a lot of thinking about patterns and breaking them, and how sometimes the most beautiful things come from unexpected combinations. Like nebulas, Oliver piped up. "Yes, darling, like nebulas." Eleanor turned to face Gray and Arya fully. "I won't pretend this is easy for me. I was raised with certain beliefs about family, about society, about what makes a proper match. But these past weeks, watching the press coverage, reading what people are saying, do you know what stood out most?" She gestured to Oliver's space corner. Every interview mentioned how Oliver has transformed, how he's excelling academically, but more importantly, how he's happy, really, truly happy. And I realized, isn't that what I wanted all along? For my family to be happy. "Mom," Gray's voice was rough with emotion. "I can't promise I'll get everything right," Eleanor continued. "I'll probably still slip up, say the wrong thing, forget that love doesn't follow social rules, but I'd like to try to be part of this new constellation you're creating." Arya felt tears sliding down her cheeks as Gray crossed the room to embrace his mother. Oliver joined them, then tugged on Arya's hand until she completed the family circle. "See?" he said proudly. "Just like we learned about gravitational forces, everything that's meant to be together finds its way back." Beverly appeared again, dabbing her eyes. "I hate to interrupt, but the movers need to know which boxes go to the new house and which stay here." "Actually," Eleanor cleared her throat, "I had an idea about that. Oliver's space corner. Perhaps we could recreate it in my sitting room. For when he visits, we could set up a secondary command center." Oliver's eyes lit up. "With a backup telescope for emergency astronomical events. I think that could be arranged." Eleanor smiled, a real smile that made her look years younger. "And perhaps we could start a new tradition. Sunday dinners at your new home. I'd like to get to know my future daughter-in-law properly." The olive branch had become a bridge. Arya squeezed Gray's hand as he replied, "We'd love that, Mother." As they worked together to pack up the classroom, deciding what would go to the new house and what would create Oliver's backup command center at his grandmother's, Arya felt the last piece of their puzzle falling into place. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. Yale classes would start soon, bringing new challenges and opportunities. The media would eventually move on to other stories, leaving them to build their life together in peace, and their family would continue to grow and change, like a nebula constantly forming new stars. Later that evening, as they stood on the porch of their new home watching the movers unload the last boxes, Oliver tugged on Eleanor's sleeve. "Grandma, want to see something cool? Zarya taught me how to find Polaris without a telescope." Eleanor allowed herself to be led to Oliver's observation spot. "You know, when I was very young, my father taught me about the stars too. I'd forgotten how magical it felt." Gray wrapped his arm around Arya's waist as they watched grandmother and grandson bent together, searching the darkening sky. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For teaching all of us how to find our way home." Arya leaned into his embrace, happiness bubbling in her chest. Above them, the first stars of evening emerged, constant and bright, witnesses to this new chapter in their ongoing story. Some love stories weren't about perfect matches or social expectations. They were about finding the courage to create something new, about building bridges instead of walls, about choosing hope over fear and growth over stagnation. They were about making space for all kinds of love to flourish under the same infinite sky. 1 year later, the backyard of the Sterling Monroe home glowed with hundreds of tiny lights strung between trees, mimicking a star-filled sky. White chairs lined a path that led to an arch adorned with astronomy-themed decorations, constellations crafted from fairy lights, metallic stars catching the setting sun, and delicate nebula-colored flowers arranged in spiraling patterns. In the master bedroom, Arya stood before a full-length mirror, her wedding dress a masterpiece of elegant simplicity. Tiny crystals scattered across the bodice caught the light like distant stars, and her veil was adorned with a subtle pattern of constellations. "You look beautiful," Eleanor said softly from the doorway. She crossed the room, adjusting Arya's veil with motherly precision. Though you're missing something old. From her purse, she withdrew a velvet box. Inside lay a delicate silver necklace with a star-shaped pendant. This was Rebecca's. Gray and I talked about it, and we both think she would want you to have it. Arya's eyes filled with tears. Eleanor, I couldn't. You can, and you will. Eleanor fastened the necklace with steady hands. You've never tried to replace Rebecca in our hearts. Instead, you've helped us honor her memory while building something new. That's a gift beyond measure. A knock at the door revealed Oliver in his junior groomsman tuxedo, practically vibrating with excitement. Mom, everyone's ready and Dad keeps checking his watch, and Grandma the wedding planner is about to have a meltdown and... He stopped, seeing the necklace. Is that Mom's star necklace? Yes, sweetheart. Arya knelt carefully in her dress. Is that okay? Oliver touched the pendant gently. It's perfect. Like how we learned that when stars die, they become part of new stars. So Mom is part of our new family too. Arya pulled him close, mindful of her makeup. When did you get so wise, Space Captain? Probably around the same time you started teaching me about quantum physics. He grinned. Dad says I get my brains from you now. Speaking of your father, Eleanor checked her elegant watch. We should get started before he sends a search party. Oliver, take your position. Arya, dear, take a moment. I'll make sure everything's ready. Once alone, Arya turned back to the mirror. The past year had been a whirlwind, starting Yale, planning the wedding, helping Oliver adjust to their new family dynamic. There had been challenges, of course. Some society members still whispered, some business associates still raised eyebrows, and merging two different worlds hadn't always been smooth. But the joy far outweighed the difficulties. Oliver had blossomed in their new home, excelling at school while maintaining his passionate love of astronomy. Gray had transformed Sterling Enterprises' corporate culture, emphasizing innovation and inclusion over tradition for tradition's sake. And Eleanor had become not just an ally, but a true friend, channeling her organizational skills into wedding planning with surprising enthusiasm. Another knock heralded Beverly's arrival. Ready, dear, your father's waiting outside. Arya took one last look in the mirror, touching Rebecca's necklace gently. Then she squared her shoulders and stepped into the hallway, where her father waited in his first-ever tuxedo. Baby girl, he breathed, eyes shining. You look like a constellation come to life. The ceremony passed in a blur of emotions. Arya would later remember key moments with crystal clarity. Oliver's proud face as he carried the rings, Eleanor dabbing tears beside a beaming Beverly, the look of pure love in Gray's eyes as she walked down the aisle. But mostly, she would remember the feeling of rightness, of pieces falling perfectly into place. Their vows, naturally, referenced the stars. Gray spoke of Polaris, guiding him home, of love burning brighter than any sun. Harriet talked about nebulas and new formations, about families built from stardust and dreams, and Oliver, in a surprise edition, read a poem he'd written about different kinds of light finding their way to each other across the universe. At the reception, Eleanor clinked her glass for attention. A year ago, she began, I thought I knew exactly what this family needed. I had plans, expectations, carefully plotted courses. But life, like the cosmos my grandson so loves to study, has a way of showing us new possibilities. She turned to the newlyweds. Arya, when you first entered our lives, I saw only what I wanted to see. Differences, challenges, complications. What I missed was the light you brought with you, the way you helped my grandson shine brighter, the way you gave my son permission to be truly happy again, the way you taught all of us that love transcends every boundary we try to place around it. Raising her glass, she continued, so here's to the Sterling Monroe constellation. May it continue to grow, to shine, and to remind us all that the most beautiful patterns are the ones we create ourselves. Later, as they swayed to their first dance, Gray whispered, happy. Arya looked around at their gathered loved ones. Oliver was teaching Eleanor and Beverly some complicated-looking dance moves. Her parents were chatting comfortably with Gray's business associates. Dean Richardson from Yale sat with her professors, probably discussing her upcoming thesis on innovative education methods. More than happy, she replied. Complete. A touch on her arm interrupted them. Dad! Mom! Come quick, you can see Jupiter really clearly right now. They followed Oliver to the telescope he'd insisted on setting up for the reception. As they took turns looking at the bright planet, Arya felt the perfection of the moment settle into her bones. This was their story, not a fairy tale of instant acceptance, but a real love story about building bridges, breaking patterns, and choosing joy. About a little boy who saw magic in the stars, a man who learned to live again, and a woman who dared to reach for both her dreams and her heart. "Make a wish," Oliver said, as a shooting star streaked overhead. "That's what you taught me, Mum. Shooting stars are for wishes." Arya pulled him close with one arm while keeping her other hand in Gray's. She didn't need to wish for anything. Everything she wanted was right here under the vast, glittering sky. Eleanor joined them, pointing out constellations she'd learned from Oliver. Beverly brought out sparklers, their light joining the stars above. And as the night deepened, the Sterling Munro family celebrated not just a wedding, but the creation of something rare and precious, a love that, like the stars themselves, would light the way home for generations to come. Years later, people would still talk about that wedding, not because it broke social conventions or challenged traditions, but because anyone who witnessed it saw something extraordinary, the birth of a new kind of family, as brilliant and beautiful as any nebula in the endless sky. And in the end, that's what love is. Not a single fixed star, but a constantly evolving constellation, growing brighter with each new light that joins its eternal dance. Oliver had been right all along. The most beautiful things in the universe, like the most beautiful kinds of love, come from unexpected combinations finding their perfect harmony under the infinite, accepting stars. 5 years later, the observation deck of the Sterling Science Center hummed with excitement as elementary school students pressed their faces against telescopes, oohing and aahing at their first glimpses of Saturn's rings. At the center of the controlled chaos stood Dr. Arya Sterling Munro, now the head of educational innovation at Yale, watching her two favorite astronomers at work. "Remember," Oliver, now 12, explained to his rapt audience, "Saturn's rings are made up of billions of pieces of ice and rock, all working together to create something beautiful, kind of like how families are made of different pieces coming together." Beside him, 4-year-old Luna Sterling Munro nodded seriously, her dark curls bouncing. "It's just like our family, right, big brother?" Oliver grinned at his little sister. "Exactly, Astronaut Junior. Want to show them how to find Polaris?" As the siblings guided their young guests through the basics of celestial navigation, Arya felt familiar arms wrap around her waist. "Quite the teachers we've got there," Gray murmured in her ear. "Well, they learned from the best." Eleanor's voice came from behind them. She joined them at the railing, elegant as ever, even while wearing the official Science Center Grandmother Volunteer badge Oliver had insisted on creating. "Though I must say, Luna's getting better at explaining nebulas than I am." The Sterling Science Center had been their shared dream, a place where children from all backgrounds could discover the wonders of the universe. Its scholarship program, funded by Sterling Enterprises, ensured that no curious mind was turned away due to financial constraints. "Mom," Luna called out, "tell them about the story of how you and Daddy fell in love under the stars." The students immediately abandoned their telescopes, clustering around Arya with pleading eyes. It was a story they never tired of hearing, no matter how many times it was told. "Well," Arya began, meeting Gray's loving gaze, "it all started with a little boy who loved space, a father who needed to remember how to shine, and a teacher who discovered that sometimes the best patterns are the ones we create ourselves." Above them, through the observatory's dome, Polaris twinkled brightly, constant, eternal, and still guiding the way home. Based on the emotional journey of Beyond Love, here is an impactful question. When Arya first entered the Sterling mansion, she was just a teacher struggling to pay for her studies, but fate had other plans. Her heart made her break all social rules and face the prejudice of the elite to experience true love. If you were in her shoes, would you have the courage to fight for this love, even though society would be against you? Would you have the strength to stand up to Eleanor and prove that true love knows no social barriers, or would you give up to avoid people's judgment? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.